What is up, everybody?
Hey, everybody. What is going on?
Welcome to week 3 of our series of hitting financial freedom and starting this journey this year. So, we are excited to have you back. We are doing a 6-part series that week by week is building on itself, teaching you the fundamental basics,
It's a hard word.
right, of finances. How do we get to passive income? How do we get out of the rat race? How do we fire our boss? How do we live the life that we were built to do, where we're not just stuck in this vicious cycle of making money, spending money, having no money left, and then having really nothing, no assets, nothing to be able to hand off to our children, honestly, most times becoming a financial burden to our kids.
I think we see this a lot because we're in the assisted living industry. So we see a lot of kids having to bear that financial burden for their parents when they have to place them in assisted living. And assisted living, if you don't know, is not cheap. It is very expensive. End of life in general is very expensive. And so I think a lot of people have not prepared for that because they don't like talking about death. They don't like talking about end of life. Or they say, I'm never going to get cancer. I'm never going to get sick. I don't need to prepare for that. You need to prepare for that. So I'm glad that we were talking about this tonight. I think that this is definitely going to be beneficial for you through your financial lifetime. And I think knowing that you won't put that burden on your children is something that actually gets me excited. So knowing that I'm taking care of, or we are taking care of our finances now, and our kids don't have to worry about it when we pass away, when we get to end of life.
So this is week 3 that we've done, and week 1, we were setting the stage, kind of talking through the steps here. Last week, week 2, we talked through the first actual steps. We talked through the defensive strategy. And I think a lot of this is like this football team analogy. Your defensive strategy is your budgeting. It is getting your finances together, not spending all the money every month. And so that's what we talked about last week. And man, you know what? It's not the most fun thing to do, but it is so vital. If you're going through this with us, I mean, we literally teach our children these things. We teach our employees, our teams these things. Go through that episode from last week. Start getting that budget together. Man, it's something you really like. I kind of have like the 4-letter word with the budget, but nonetheless, you never get rich. You never get wealthy. You never get any of those fun things together that we're going to be building towards, talking about buying assets and living the life you want to live if you can't manage your money. There are so many people in this world making millions of dollars and having no wealth, right? You can have high active income, but no wealth because you don't have your stuff together. So it's a vital part of this, having the defensive team together. We talked about this analogy of kind of this football team, right? You have your defensive line, you also have your offensive line, and then your special teams. And we'll talk about special teams later. But tonight we're going to be focusing on the offense here, your offensive line, right? These people, they are different types of people, different type of athletes, different types of plays being ran on a football team than the defensive team, right? Defensive guys, you got these blockers are 350 pounds. They're there to block for you, right? They're running different plays. They're a different caliber of athlete than some of the guys that are like, much smaller and can do cartwheels and catch the ball in the end zone with one hand. That's a whole different set of people, of individuals, and a whole different set of plays that you're running. And I think it's important to distinguish that because really we're doing 2 different things. We're doing defense, which is important, but then we're doing offense, right? And really of the whole thing, offense is the most important because where the power is on the offensive side. This is where you make the real difference. On the defensive side, on the budgeting side, getting that stuff together, man, it's super important that you're not making all this money and just going out the back door. But you will not save yourself into financial freedom. I'm not here to tell you to cut coupons or live on rice and beans. I think that is all stupid. I'm here to show you how do you make tons of money, right? What are the steps that I can do that actively, and I can do that therefore later passively so that I can get out of this cycle. And you're not going to get out of the cycle by saving yourself into being a multimillionaire. If you want to be a multimillionaire, you need to make a lot of money on the active side. And that's where we're going to talk about tonight. That is so important relative to kind of the steps in the process here. So there's really this kind of formula we're talking about, right? With the end goal of how do we buy assets? How do we have enough money saved that is ready to purchase something that is going to spit off passive income every single month, every single year? It's going to have money babies. We're going to pile those money babies up and we're going to buy another asset, right? And we're going to compound, we're going to snowball. You cannot get to a place where you can start purchasing assets unless you have money saved, right? So that's why last week was important, getting this budget together. But this week, this is where most of the energy, most of the inertia and effect comes from, because you can double your income. There's no one telling you you can't make twice as much money, right? We can hit in, millions or tens of millions. You can go from 60,000 to 80,000 or from 80,000 to 150,000, right? You and your spouse, your partner can make as much money as you reasonably see fit. That's the important part. The not so important part is the defensive side. You cannot, practically cut your expenses by, 100%, right? If you're making 75 grand a year, you cannot cut 75 grand out of your budget. It's not possible to spend $0 a year, right? You have to spend money. But you could, if you made $75,000 a year, you could go up by $75,000 a year. You could have that same net difference, and that is really, really attainable and achievable versus, on the budgeting side. So in perspective, right, both are important, but I want to say that, man, it's probably 10 times more your priority and your focus to focus on offense. We start with the defense because honestly, that's just setting your foundation. And that's just the first level, right? Now we're building this big old building here, right? Everything else after that is just focus on offense. Let's make as much money as we can. Let's save all that money so we have this real idea of, buying these assets.
I wanted to add that since we're talking about the football analogy, we love football, by the way, so that's why we love this football analogy. I think it's important to note that we talk to a lot of married couples, and a lot of times married couples seem to be on different teams financially. And I say that because I think it's important to be on the same team. If you're on the offensive team together and you're on the defensive team together, it's really difficult if you have one person on offense and one person on defense. And I think we see this all the time. And I think you hear the cliche of the women are always spending the money. They're always getting the Amazon packages and whatever else. But that's not necessarily true. It can also be the men who are also big spenders, and maybe the females wanting to save. So I'm not falling into that gender trap. I think that there are habits that have been instilled in us since we were kids. And if we see our parents spending all the time, then usually we kind of get that habit as we get older. And so I think it's important, if you are watching this and you have a significant other who is not on board with being financially free, that it's important for them to get on board with you. It will be a very hard feat if you are not in this together. And I want you to understand that you are a team together in this. We don't have separate accounts. We don't do that. All of our stuff is together because we are a team together. And so maybe you are unsure on how to portray this to them. Hey, honey, I need you to stop spending money. That's usually not the best conversation to have. I think it would just kind of note or say, hey, I would love for you to watch this. It's like 20 minutes long. Or maybe talk about a book that you just read, kind of just small droplets. In order for them to finally come around, it'll take them about 5 to 10 times of hearing you talk about this before they probably will be open to it. So I just wanted to note the importance of being on the same team financially with your significant other.
So let's get into it for what we're talking about today on the strategy of increasing your income. And this is really where we're going to start this talk, is starting out where you are. I want you to, wherever you are at work-wise now, that's really where you should focus. How do I make more money where I'm already at? Don't do something totally new. Don't jump into a completely different field. Don't switch from I have this active income over here and I want to move to active income over here and move into an unstable position, right? You're just going to trade X for Y, and there's always this gap in there where you're not making as much money, and it's like, what if it doesn't work out? Start where you're already at. What job are you already doing? Essentially think of it in this perspective. How do you add more value to the current company that you're working for? And when you add more value, when you bring in additional income for the company, how do you get a piece of that? And I would honestly just think of it from that perspective. If any of my employees came to me and said, hey, Brett, I'm doing this, I'm going to keep doing that, but what else can I do? Can I do this over here, right? I'm already here. Can I stay a couple extra hours? Can I work on this side over here? Can I do this? Can I sell some of these things over here, right? I see you're selling some things. Can I come in on commission? Can I sell some of these things? If you're already in the building, if you already have the knowledge of what the industry is like and you have the existing relationships, this is where you need to focus because you can leverage your time and position and opportunity because you're already doing those things. You're already in that place. So I want you to think of it from that perspective. How do you talk to your current boss? How do you stay in your current niche? How do you get another customer similar to the customers that you already have? Or if you're in one type of job, how do you stay in that same kind of industry and look at a very similar type of position and say, hey, you know what? Can I pick up shifts on the weekend? Can I do these extra hours? If you're already there, man, what's the difference, right? You're already there. You don't have to go and commute somewhere else, right? I think this is the best place to start, where you already are and what you're already doing. And then just say, hey, you know what? What else can I do? How can I add some more value to this place? And I think that you definitely should not go and do something like, let me just get another part-time job, right? If you're making $25 an hour, and you're working whatever it is, don't go and get another $25 an hour job, right? Don't go get a job at In-N-Out or, get a receptionist job at a dentist office. That's not what I would encourage you to do. I think that you need to increase the amount of pay you're getting per hour, per unit. And think of it from this perspective. You're already making, whether it's $25 an hour or, $45,000 a year, whatever number you're making, $50,000 a year. What you want to do is essentially just double the amount of hourly wage that you have. Get at least $50 an hour. If you're making 25, then get 50, right? Don't go and get a second part-time job making the same amount of money you are. If you're waiting tables, don't get another waiting table job, right? Find something because you're not going to add an extra 40 hours of work. If you're already working 40 hours, it's not realistic that you can do this forever working an extra 40. Now you have 80 hours a week. That's not what we're talking about. If you can commit to an extra 2 hours a day after work, after work, you're already there, you're staying in the same place, or just a Saturday, a full day on the Saturday, half a day Saturday, half a day Sunday. How can you put in an extra 8 or 10 hours a week where you are making double the amount of wage? And perhaps it's not something at your same job, but what if it's something, an existing skill set that you already have? So when I say stay where you are, perhaps it's not at an actual business, but maybe it's where you are in your skills or in your mind or what you can currently do. What I'm trying to say is don't go learn something totally new. Do what you already have and increase the value that you can bring because you don't have an extra 40 hours a week. But if you can put in an extra 8 or 10 hours a week, then this is something that is long-term and sustainable. So I would think of it like this. Your job, your goal over the next 1 to 3 months is to increase your income by 10%. How do you increase your income by 10%? Let's just say you make $6,000 a month after you pay the man in taxes. Okay, how do I take 10% of that? $600. How do I get an extra $600 a month? Right? And that's not hard math. Okay, $600 a month, divide that by 4. I need to make $150 a week extra. Right? Is that one Saturday? How do I make $150 on a Saturday? Well, that's not too hard. Okay. Just think of it from that perspective. Your first initial goal is to increase your income by 10%. That should be pretty easy to do. Find something scalable, sustainable, where you make a substantial more amount of money per unit of hour. Then step 2, right? In the next 6 months, here's your goal to increase your income by 20%. And you may not jump from 10 to 20 right away, but how do you get from 10 to 12 to 15 to 18 to 20% over the next 6 months? That's really what we want you to do, right? How do you get to, I am now making an extra 20% of my income? Because last time we talked about how do I save an extra 20%? How do I cut an extra 20% out of the budget, right? We are trying to get you to a place where you have this wide cushion here. You have a 40% margin. That is life-changing numbers right there. If you can get to 40%, that's not what most Americans save. Most Americans save 2-3%. That's bullcrap. You're not going anywhere with that. 40% is a no joke, real deal. I'm going to get somewhere. I'm going to achieve my goals in the next 5 years. You're going to see for serious action if you can get this way. And if you just break it into offensive team and defensive team, 20% here, 20% there, it's super doable. And then you compound that by getting your spouse, your partner on the same team with you, get on the same page, running these same plays, committed to the same goals. Man, you know what? Then you guys are cooking. It took Laura and us from like, man, we were poor and broke as crap. She was working 3 jobs. I was working 2 and just hated our lives. It took us not that long, like 8 years or something to go from start like waiting tables to financially free, right? That was it, 8 years. We just burned the boats. We got on the same page. We were committed and we took action steps on a plan. And this is literally the plan that I'm talking about, right? There were these 6 steps. That's it. It was kind of that simple. It was not easy at all, but it was simple.
Not easy at all. It took a lot of discipline, I think is the best word to describe it. Is, man, you have to have a lot of discipline to, first of all, create a budget. And second of all, talk about money with your spouse. And then third of all, not go out and not spend money on extravagant things. And it's hard because we love going out. We love food. We love those things. But I think having a future minded outlook on things really helped us to have that why. Like, why are we doing this? So are we doing this for us? Are we doing this for our kids? Are we doing it for other people? Like, why are we doing this? So yeah, it was not an easy road, but now looking back on it, I would do it 100 times over.
Oh, for sure. And what she talked about here with your why, right? I think that's an important point for you guys to consider. Where are you at right now? Are you in a place of pain? Like, are you financially in a place where it's like, this is not the life that I was made to live? I know inside of me there's something more that I should be having, right? I have these opportunities for my kids and I can't afford it. I want to put them in sports. I want to put them in a private school. I want to move to this other neighborhood, right? But I can't. Like, what is the pain point that you have? Perhaps it's your parents. Are you not able to financially take care of your parents as they are aging and they haven't prepared for themselves? There's some type of things that you are missing in this life. There's a gap, right? You're here and you want to be here. This distance that you have, that's your pain. And I would talk about that with your spouse. We did. We were in a crap storm of like, we hate this situation in our lives. And we got on the same page and said, you know what? We are going to commit to do this together. Or what if it's the other side? What if it's not pain that you're in, but it's a opportunity that you're missing, right? Mm-hmm. What about the trips that you want to take? You may have all the food on the table you need, but you know, what about those vacations, those dreams, those goals that you want to do, and you're not able to do them? What about the heart that you have to want to help people, right? When you're in your church or in your community and you see people struggling financially, you see that family friend that got cancer and you want to step up and, you know, you want to help and you just can't. Your budget is strapped, right? You may be, you know, not necessarily living a paycheck to paycheck, but you can't be the blessing that you want. That's pain there too, right? Because you are not living the life that God created you to live. You want to be in abundance. You want to have hands wide open. You're like, here, I got all of this because I'm a steward. I'm a great steward. I have learned these financial intelligence things and just it comes to me because I'm following a system and a path and I'm diligent with these things. So I would encourage you to have these conversations with your spouse. Sometimes you guys are just not on the same page. Sometimes you want totally different things, right? Sometimes one person just wants to blow all the money and say, screw retirement. We're going to die before then. I'll tell you what, we run an end-of-life business, and it is so expensive to die, and it takes decades of dying slowly and painfully, and it's so expensive, and it's not quick, and it's not painless, and it's not cheap. So prepare for this, because you will see your parents, what it costs them, and when they become a burden to you, if that is the case, because they did not take action steps like this. Mm-hmm. So what I would say to you, right? We're talking about this gap. We're talking about, 40%, okay? 20% of cutting from your crappy budget, and you cut the crap out of it, and then 20% of increasing your income gives you this 40% margin. But here's the thing. If you spend it month after month, you're like, hey, babe, we just made all this extra money. We deserve it, right?
Yeah.
We work so hard. Bro, you don't deserve any of that crap. You know what you deserve is the life of your dreams, right? Put in 5 years now of hustling, grinding, hard work. It sucks. Whatever, just do it. It's 5 years for the next 50 years, right? You're not going to set yourself up for 50 years in 5 years, but you will start the snowball going, which will continue to roll, and you will have an abundance, right? You will have way more than you need. But if you don't put in this short 5 years now, man, then you will suffer for the next 50 years. And you just got to start, you got to execute this plan. So as you are saving this money, as you are increasing your income, you cannot spend this money. This is literally not your money. This is what we told ourselves. Laura, like we would have this conversation, hey, we got this money in the account. It's not ours. It's not. You know whose money it is? It's our future selves. This is our money when we hit 60, 70, 80, 90, right? My grandma just lived to 104 years old. It cost her over $1 million after she turned 90 years old. She didn't financially plan for that. I mean, she was fine, but she did not think she was going to live that long. Man, we are all going to live so much longer than we are budgeting for, right? Technology, all that stuff is just blowing up. So you got to get your crap together. You have to have these awkward, hard conversations with your spouse, and you got to encourage them, babe, we need to do this. What is our why? What is the pain that we're in? Because, man, life is long and it's expensive. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is compound interest, right? This right here, this is so impactful. The first time that I did it, we were just babies in the financial game. And I read this book and I'm like, oh man, compound interest, okay, cool. It was the first time I literally heard of it. And I Google searched it and I put in a compound interest calculator and it's just like, poof, like my mind just blew up. I'm like, wait a minute. We were barely making any money. So I'm like, if I put in, we were saving like $500 a month. Mm-hmm. If I put in $500 a month and I fast forward, I'm like, I don't remember the numbers. It was like 10 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, babe, we're going to have over $1 million, right? If we save $500 a month and compound it at like 10%. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can be a millionaire. It's that simple. All I gotta do is save $500 a month. So my mind was blown, and I want you to have this same mind blown kind of thing. So let me show you what this looks like here. If you are a person that makes, say, 72 grand a year, okay? It's a nice round number. You make $6 grand a month after you pay the man. So you have, let's say, 72,000 net to you, right? If you were able to, therefore, you have $6,000 a month, 10% of that. So we're back to $600 a month. If you're able to cut $600 a month out of that budget, right, on the defensive side, then you're able to side hustle, save an extra 10% there, right? It's only a difference of 20%. That's $1,200 a month. If you and or your spouse together, so this is much less than I was telling you to do because I wouldn't you go way faster. But as a very minimum, if you were a normal family, 72 grand a year, and you're able to save 20% of that by cutting and by adding extra income, $1,200 a month. With that, man, I'll show you in just a minute here, but hundreds of dollars a month equal millions of dollars over 30 years. And I want to stress how important that is because it became really, really attainable to us that it was like, you know what, babe, we actually can do this thing, right? We never were taught growing up that we could be millionaires, that we can have, vast amounts of wealth, right? We learned it in books. We learned it on YouTube. We grew into this mindset, and you can do the same thing. That's really what I would encourage you to do. You don't have to make $1 million a year in active income or even $500,000 or $300,000 a year, right? The normal person, the school teacher, the janitor, the whatever it is, secretary, any of these kind of normal positions, right? You can do this on 72 grand a year and save that and hit multiple millions by the time you get to end of life or by the time you hit, 30 years. So what I wanted to do is show you what this looks like here. And this is something that anybody can do. You can pull up this website right here, okay? It is thecalculatorsite.com. And this is what we're looking at here. We're looking at $1,200 a month as your initial investment. We're gonna compound this at 10% interest and continue every single month to add $1,200. So that's all it is. You're saving $1,200 Every single month, you're going to come in, you're going to add it, you're going to invest in something that makes 10%. We'll talk about that in another week. This is where you get in just 10 years, you get to 250,000. Like, oh, okay, that's pretty decent, right? Not too bad. But the whole point of this is the long game, right? This is enough to get your snowball going. So again, we're not going to change the amount of money you're going to add here, right? So again, $1,200, not a big deal. At 15 years, now you're $500,000. That's enough to retire. That's, the average senior average person in America, 65 plus or more, has just over 100,000 worth of net worth. That's already 5 times that, right? That's doing pretty good. But what if you just kept rolling? The whole plan here is this is snowball. This is the long game. What does it look like as you're going 20 years? Now we've almost doubled again. We went from 250 to 500 to almost $1 million, right? Every 5 years, we're increasing by a good amount here. So almost $1 million at I think a relatively small amount of savings between you and your spouse, just $1,200 a month. Boom, you're at 920. Right? But what if we keep going? This is the whole point. This is the long game. This is not get rich quick. This is get rich for sure. How do I get rich for sure? You get a plan together, you execute with your spouse, and you play the long game here. So in 25 years, now you're at 1.6 million. This is something that gets me excited. I'm like, man, I can for sure retire on something like that. That is a good number there. But what if we keep going here? What if we hit 30 years? Look at how it just went up by such a substantial amount. It went up by over $1 million. This is where the snowball picks up so much speed. You're at 2.7 million here, right? This is what we're talking about. This is where you get big numbers. You just start early. You don't have to have a crazy amount of money. You don't have to make 500 grand a year and invest it and be like this stock market god. Man, all you have to do is start now and just wait. Be consistent and just wait. Because this is how people make crazy amounts of wealth. It's really just time, right? This is where we start talking about, like, how do you get to generational wealth? How do people get so vastly wealthy? Do you want to know how so vastly wealthy? Because they started with their parents or their grandparents, right? If you go into this same calculator and you push it forward another 10 years, we went from 40 to 30 years to 40. I mean, look at this. Now we're talking $7.6 million on 40 years. This is what we're talking about, generational wealth. What if your parents did this for you? What if they got their crap together 20 or 30 years ago and started this process? We're not talking about a ton of money. We are still talking $1,200 a month. And this is 40 years in the future. You should be saving so much more, right? Now look at 50 years. What about your kids? What if you were the one to start this and you were the one to say, I'm making commitment for my future generations, for my children, for my grandchildren? This is over $20 million. Now, granted, it's 50 years, but you're talking about a tiny bit of money that you're going to start a snowball with. And man, the most important thing is time.
So when I thought about this, I thought about Warren Buffett. And if you don't know who Warren Buffett is, look him up. He's like the king of compound interest. And I looked up his wealth by age specifically. And what was so cool was seeing that he was in it for the long game. He started off, I think it was like he was in his teens. He was very young. But I think he started early, which I think it's never too late. Even if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you can still do this. So he started, and he didn't hit his like kind of quote unquote peak of his wealth until he was like in his mid 70s. And so can we zoom in on this a little bit so people can see it better? If you can't see it well on here, look it up. Just look up net worth of Warren Buffett by age. And as you can see here, like it's like pretty non-existent in his, 30s and 40s. But then you can see the momentum. And I think this is kind of a visual aid for you for what we just showed on that compound interest calculator. It's really those last like 5, 10, 15, 20 years that you really see it compounding on top of itself. And so I really wanted to show you this because I think it's really interesting. And I also think it's inspiring to know that you're making a difference for your children and possibly your children's children and their children by having the discipline within yourself and by not being selfish And I know I say this every time we're on this call, but if you are not pursuing wealth, I literally believe that you were selfish. You're only looking at yourself. You're only looking internally. You're only looking at your own family. It's almost like you have those blinders like those horses do, and you're only internal. You don't have those blinders off where you're able to look up and able to help so many other people within your community, within your church, within your family, within other countries. I think that's really what excites me is being able to help maybe a community in Africa like get clean water or something. I know it sounds silly, but like what a cool thing to do. And so it makes you dream and it inspires you to be able to have that self-discipline within yourself currently. Because I always say this as well as you got to choose your hard, right? It's hard to be poor, and it's also hard to be rich. Choose your hard. It's hard to be overweight and it's hard to be in shape. You got to choose your hard. It's hard to, communicate with your spouse, but it's hard to have a divorce. Choose your hard. Like there's hard everywhere. And so I think choosing the hard now while you're young and agile and have energy, I'd rather choose the hard now than choose it when I'm 70 and, maybe I can't move my body as well as I can now or my mind as well. And so choose your hard. And I would say choose it now. You don't want to choose it later because actually the hard might fall on your kids and you don't want to see that.
Well, that is what we have for you this week, right? So as far as action steps, if you haven't done it from last week, go through the defensive part, get your budget together, go through those categories, get it all set up, cut 20% from your budget. Then for this week, get a plan together, research how can you increase your income in the next 90 days by 10%, right? Not a crazy amount. How can you get a side hustle? Think on these things, but do it in a way where you are not trading the same dollar, the same hourly rate for a current unit of hour, right? Double your value because you only have a limited amount of extra time to be able to hit this.
So we have some questions in the chat, and I know I didn't announce that in the beginning, so my apologies. If you do have a question, make sure you put it in the chat on the side, but you do have to be a subscriber. So make sure you just click that subscribe button and then ask any questions you have. We have about 5 currently, but if there's anybody else who has a burning question that you just have to have answered, please make sure to put it down over there. So we're just going to fire these away.
Let's do it.
All right, Christine, I love your question. I'm so glad you asked this question. What are your thoughts about getting out of debt, accept a mortgage before investing?
Yes. I wouldn't be like 100% this. I would say yes, as a general principle. There are some things that maybe your car, some of those other things, maybe student loans, right? But like your credit cards and all that kind of stuff, for sure, 100% knock those out. I would consider those kind of bad debts. And then there's good debts. I would consider your personal mortgage in that category as well. I would keep that kind of stuff. But yeah, you can. And here's kind of my hesitation is because I consider some of your first investments spending money on yourself, on your education and those kind of things. And I do think you should be spending some money on yourself, investing in yourself along that path as you are knocking down those debts.
When you started trying to raise your income, what were ways you did it?
For me, it was sales. I think the biggest way in order to make an extra 50 or 100 grand or more is selling something. And so it was our own business, right? We focused and we learned how to double our income because we had a sales opportunity. Even if you don't have a sales job, man, you know what? Your company sells something. Can you get a commission? Can you do those kind of things? How do you make some sales? How do you get on the phone team or something like that? How do you get some commission? Right? I think that is the quickest and fastest way because you already know your product. You already know who the customer is. You've already have this experience with it. Can you sell some of this stuff on the side? Can you work an extra hour or two at night and be like, hey, let me just get on commission. Like, let me make some sales for the company.
What is the best tip you can give someone who works full-time but wants to generate financial freedom? Working a second job where income is purely saved?
Yeah. I think really the advice is this whole thing that we're teaching through on these 6 steps, right? So getting together with your spouse, if you have a partner in life, then making sure you're on the same page, because you could do all of this kind of stuff. And if they're an anchor, then you know what, like you can only swim so far, and then you get pulled down, and you'll have all this excitement, all that kind of stuff, but it'll fizzle out in 6 months or something. Or you just create these kind of divides and conflicts because you're saving, and then they're just blowing all the money that you saved, and then it's like this whole thing of I'm getting a separate account and blah blah blah. Anyways, same page. Side hustle. Do what you can, right? Make as much money as you can in those limited amount of time, but then use that time to develop yourself and grow yourself. And we're going to be building towards buying assets, right? And there's so many different things you can do. We decided to learn the real estate game, and it's not like there's just one game, right? There's so many different things. We played and dabbled in mobile homes, and then wholesaling, and then flipping, and then room and boards, and then seller finance stuff, then into assisted living, then into investing in businesses. So many different things that, man, it's honestly super fun. But some of it you might be like, oh, I can't stand this thing. I felt that way about buying mobile homes and selling those on payments. I was like, this is something I don't want to do. But that's actually kind of the fun part of learning these niches. And this is where that investment money comes, to invest in some of these things, or coaches and courses, and just figuring out what you like, because this is the long play, right? This is, how do I spend the next 30, 40, 50 years and do something that excites you and you think is fun?
What if you are older and don't have the luxury of time on your side?
Start now.
Yep.
There's no other option.
Yep.
You either ask your kids to cover you, or you start today.
Yeah.
And you know what? Laura talks about this all the time. KFC.
He started when he was 60. Colonel Sanders, he opened KFC when he was 60. So I don't think you're ever too old to put your finances as something that's important to you, because again, it's going to fall on somebody once you get sick, or once you need to be placed somewhere else, or whatever it may be. It costs money to get old and to get sick and to pass away. And I think that that's not talked about enough. And so it's definitely something that you need to be aware of, and that you need to take action on, because you don't want to put that stress on your kids. We see it all the time. We see these daughters and these sons have to bear the financial burden of their parents because they didn't have their financials in order. And it puts stress on their marriage. A lot of times it ends in divorce. It puts stress on the relationship with their kids, and with the relationships just with everyone in their life in general. And so you don't want to put that on your kids. And so it's vitally important that you, no matter how old you are, I still think if you're 70 or in mid 70s, you still should start. So I don't know how old you are, this individual asked this question, but it's never too late.
Well, let me add on to that, because we're talking about examples here, and I'm showing the compound interest calculator at 10% and showing, hey, okay, over 20, 30 years, right? Here's how you get to, $1 to $3 million. We didn't do that like that. Honestly, okay, we said we got from starting out broke college students waiting tables to financially free in 8 years. And it's because we didn't do it like that. What we did was we did the exact same process. We learned a niche, and the niche that we learned was the real estate game. We bought houses. We had an active income. We were flipping houses, but we used that opportunity to buy rental properties. And I would say this for you, or anybody, I think you could do this in 5 to 10 years and just replace your income. If you make $5,000 a month, how do you bring in $5,000 a month in passive income, right? We did it by buying some houses. What if you bought 5 houses that each generated $1,000 a month? And that was really our path. We bought our first one, and it only brought in like $300 a month. And then the second one is a little bit more. And then, you know what? By the time we got down the road, nearing 7, 8 years, the market had shifted. We were buying these houses, and all of a sudden COVID happened, and then it went up and down, and then it went way back up again, and then rents went up and all these kind of things. And all of a sudden, these houses that we were cash flowing $300 a month started going to $700 a month, then to $800 plus dollars a month. And our debts kept going down, right? We were paying off the loan little by little, but the rents kept going up and our cash flow kept going up. So we were having these small deals that turned into, 8 years later, hey, we're netting $1,000 a month on all of these. And it was, a simple play. We had like 12 rentals. We were kind of selling them off because they're in California. But we had 12 rentals, not a crazy amount, right? It took us, a handful of years to get there, but we had over $10,000 a month in passive, consistent income after all the rental expenses and stuff. And I would say that's a realistic plan for just about anybody, right? You can do these things. You might not be able to do it in your own backyard as far as markets and rentals and things like that. But that would be where I would point someone to who says, hey, you know what? I'm a little bit older. I want to retire in 10 years. Cool. Do this, right? There are so many free resources on how to do this, BRRRR method, and you're buying your first flip or rental or all those kind of things. I would point you in that direction. But the principle is exactly the same. You still need to have the plan here. You still have to not spend all the money and increase your income so that you have the money in the bank to buy something, right? That's the asset part of this. This is the special teams and that football analogy, and we're building towards this in the next couple of weeks. But that's really what we did. And I'm just telling you step by step by step exactly what we did. It took us 8 years to get to over $10,000 a month in passive income.
Let's see here. It looks like that's all the questions. Anybody have any last minute questions that they want to ask? Drop them in. That's probably it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, good. So next week, same time, same place. Next Tuesday, we're going to continue part 4 of our 6-part series, continuing to build on this, getting to the fun stuff. How do we buy assets? How do we invest? How do we do all the cool stuff? You can't do the cool stuff without doing the fundamentals, that kind of stuff.
Boring
first.
stuff.
The boring stuff. The boring stuff makes you rich. And
Yeah,
it is
true.
what it is.
It's very true.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I appreciate y'all being here. We will see you guys next time.
See you next Tuesday.